Um, so before Nick kicks off, I thought I'd better answer a question that you guys may or may not have. Who is Future Ready Homes? And why are we hosting this webinar and talking to construction professionals about retrofit? It's a really good question. So Future Ready Homes, there we go, is run by March's Energy Agency, a charity that was set up in Shrewsbury 27 years ago. March's Energy Agency are actually better known under certain brands, which you might be familiar with, which actually belong to local councils. So that's Keep Shropshire Warm, Telford Energy Agency, and Warmer Derby and Derbyshire. We run helplines through these. So we answer the phones and we help people who are in fuel poverty, essentially advice. We also work in government-funded programs, which you might have heard about, such as Eco4, which is now called Warmer Homes Local Grant. And that's where people who are on low incomes can apply for grant-funded works to their homes to make them more energy efficient. So the councils are the ones that actually apply for the money for that from central government and appoint contractors, but we look after the householder through the process. And the contractors, as you may know, tend to be the big players. They're the ones who can afford to go through all the paperwork and the hoops of Trustmark, past 2035, and so on. So what about everyone else, the people that don't qualify for the grants, but want to improve the energy efficiency of their homes? Well, there's essentially no support for those guys. So a few years ago, we set up an energy an advice service for them called Future Ready Homes, which we're delivering with support from Herefordshire Green Network. So if you're wondering what Herefordshire Green Network has to do with all this, that's where we come in. Future Ready Homes is playing a really important role. It's impartial, it's independent, it's accurate, and our advice can be trusted. We've built up a lot of trust with hundreds of householders that we've supported over the last 3 years. So we've been doing events, we've been doing webinars like these, but for householders on all sorts of different topics to do with retrofit. We've been doing open homes events, which you might have heard about, green open homes, previously known to be green doors. We publish case studies about retrofit, all sorts of excellent advice that is free to the public to help raise awareness of retrofit. We also do surveys of homes and advise people on exactly what would work best in their home. So that's whatever type of property they've got, although I have to say we do predominantly get people who are in older heritage type properties, the ones that are uncomfortable, uncomfortably cold, uncomfortably expensive to run. But actually we offer advice to everyone. And whatever their motivation is, we have a lot of different motivations when people come to us. It can be to reduce energy bills. It can be to be more comfortable from drafts. It might be to make the home more healthy and improve the air quality, reduce their carbon footprint is a biggie. It might be to fix a specific issue like damp or mold or a freezing cold bathroom, which we'll come on to. It could be to increase the value of their home. So lots and lots of different reasons. And we are getting more frequently as well people who are interested in installing an SOS heat pump, but they're wondering if it's going to be suitable for their house and if it's actually going to work, and what they might need to do to ensure that it does work. So we look at the whole house and we advise on all of it. Once we've done that, a lot of the householders say to us, great, thanks for the advice. We want to get on with it, but who's going to do the work? Who's going to do the internal wall insulation? Who's going to do the repairs? Who's going to put the SOS heat pump in? We want someone who is recommended and someone with experience. That is what everyone is after. So that's essentially why we're here tonight, why we're talking to you guys. We want to build partnerships with installers and contractors. We know that there is a need for and a shortage of local retrofit professionals who are doing great work. We're being told this day in, day out. So we want to put that right to improve that situation. So how are we doing that? Not just through this webinar. We've already got the Future Ready Homes directory up and running, which you might have seen, you might not have done, I would encourage you to take a look. That is a website where you can search for retrofit professionals that are already doing good work in the area. The recommendations all came from householders, all came to us. So this isn't us just putting people's names on there. It's not companies just putting their own names on there. It's homeowners that have come along and said, yeah, these people have done great work. We would be happy to recommend them. And we put them all in one place. And the website is getting a lot of traction. It's getting a lot of visits actually, which is really nice and reassuring, but also again shows people are looking for retrofit professionals. We've also been running some matchmaking events. Well, we've done one so far in Shrewsbury, which was a huge success. So that's basically speed dating for householders and installers of various types. So I think the last one we had, I don't know, we had about 10 installers. There was architect, there were builders, there were plasterers, there were heat pump installers, solar panel installers, a real mixture. And we had about 30 householders along as well, all of which are people who have had a survey or know that they want to start their retrofit project. They've got a plan, they've got a budget, they just didn't know who to do the work. So yeah, that was really good. Short 15-minute conversations with as many of those as you wanted in the evening. And the feedback has been brilliant, and there's been some really good leads and really good results from that. So we want to do more of that. And that's a way that we can help boost your business. We're also providing free training and support with the very experienced People Powered Retrofit from Manchester. And first one of those is next week, next Thursday, the 3rd of July, 10:30. That's going to be till kind of 12:31. And it's at Shrewsbury Football Club, a deep dive into domestic retrofit, case study and lessons learnt. That's with Gervais Mangwana, who is a really experienced local retrofit expert and energy assessor. So he's learned a lot. he's found things out the hard way, and wants to share those lessons. So that's that one. And then in September and October, we're getting into a couple of half-day hands-on air tightness and insulation training events, and they're going to be in Shrewsbury most likely, but that's to be confirmed. And then early next year, a 2-day Retrofit Essentials training course as well. So lots coming up, all free, all designed to really help produce the retrofit experience, confidence, skills that is needed to meet the demand that is there. And then finally, we've got ongoing technical support. So we have a technical panel of experts that are part of Future Ready Homes, and we are there to help homeowners as well, but also to help professionals as they're doing work, offer advice, do a bit of hand holding if this is new to you and you've got questions and you're not really sure. So yeah, that is what we are doing. I just wanted to very quickly clarify, Nick's going to go into more details on this one, but put into context what we're talking about in this webinar when we're talking retrofit. So a couple of moments ago, I said that Future Ready Homes offers advice on retrofitting the whole house. Now the whole house, that will potentially include fabric upgrades, which is insulating the walls, loft, upgrading windows, replacing doors. It could include air tightness work, ventilation work, a switch to low carbon heating, like an air source heat pump, and the addition of renewables, solar, PV batteries. But for this presentation and for today, what we're focusing on is those first three. So the fabric upgrades, not including windows and doors, air tightness and ventilation. That's broadly what we're going to be speaking about.
Jen, do you mind if I just wanted to leap in for 1 second?
Yeah.
If I may, just to it is highly unusual for us to have a webinar with so few people on board, and I just wanted to reassure everyone. I think the last one we did, we very nearly hit the magic 100 number. We had, I think it was 95, 96 attendees who were householders. It was about heat pumps. So we are getting a lot of traction. as James said, we're producing lots of good material, and there are lots and lots of householders out there who are interested in retrofit. But as we were saying, there are not enough installers, and the relatively poor showing tonight, I think proves that. But anyway,
Yeah.
sorry, you were going to hand over to Nick.
Yeah.
I'm just going to introduce Nick. Yeah. So Nick Parsons is a sustainable building expert. He has got well, he's been working in energy efficient and sustainable building for over 35 years and has just entered sort of semi-retirement-ish. He's one of the UK's leading experts in eco refurbishment, and has been a regular tutor in sustainable building and renewable energy at the world-renowned Centre for Alternative Technology in Monkcliffe. And he spent many years working on the tools himself as well. So yeah, plenty of experience there. So I'm going to hand over to Nick now, if that's okay.
Splendid. Next slide, please. Yeah. So hello, everybody. I was going to introduce myself, but Gemma has done it very well. Yes, I was on the tools. I'm very occasionally on the tools, but mainly as part of hands-on tuition, because unfortunately I'm getting riddled with arthritis, which is something you sometimes get after being on the tools for that many years. Anyway, so retrofit, yeah, the different names for it. Some people are a bit confused by what retrofit means. If you say it's eco refurbishment, it's green refurbishment, it's energy efficiency refurbishment, sometimes people understand that better, but the phrase that's the buzzword is retrofit. So it's about refurbishing existing buildings to very high standards, and it assumes that it is about energy stuff. But you also, you want to get good standards of insulation, you want to get low carbon heating methods, or at least design for them. I tend not to spend a lot of time talking about the heating system, because what I try and do is get the house really, really tight and well insulated from the point of view of air tightness and insulation, well ventilated, and then whatever heating system you decide to put in, you put in the smallest one, because you've done so much to reduce heat loss. One really important thing with retrofit, and this may be stating the blindingly obvious, but lots of people still don't listen to it, is don't deal with existing faults before you crack on. Don't build in disrepair. Don't build on top of wet timbers, soggy timbers, whatever it might be. And also, it's about trying to get a really tight job. So trying to get the air tightness. It's not just doing air tightness in one room, it's got to connect to the next room and the next room and the next room. We don't always have the option to do retrofits all at once. I have had 2 jobs in my entire building career where the client has moved out and we've done the whole lot, and then they've moved in again. All the rest has been incremental. And the really important thing is, if you're doing stuff incrementally, you have to remember to leave edges. So if you're doing one room at a time, there has to be a way of connecting the work in one room to the next room. You know, if it's horizontally, if you got one room next to another, then you can't necessarily connect, because that would involve knocking a wall down. But you can return onto an internal wall so that you're cloaking the thermal bridge. If it's from the bottom to the top, you can cut the ceiling back. You can cut the floor back, and you can make sure that the internal insulation goes all the way up from the ground floor right up to the attic. I heard somebody talking yesterday about some of the volume insulation projects which are going on, and allegedly some of them are still going from the ground floor up to the ground floor ceiling, starting again at the first floor and going on up. And we thought we'd stop doing that. I used to work for a housing association 45 years ago. We thought we'd stop doing that 30 or 40 years ago, because we knew that was wrong, because you get cold bits and you're not stitching everything tightly together. We want to get really high standards of air tightness if we can. You know, if you can get down to 1 air change per hour or less, you're into kind of Retrofit or passive house regions, but it isn't always, you can't always get it that good. But you want to know what's leaking and where, because if you've got leaks that you don't know about or that you haven't chased down and dealt with properly, then the house isn't going to perform as well as you want it to do. If you're doing incremental retrofit, so doing it a bit at a time over a period of years, you may or may not do mechanical ventilation with heat recovery. I'm currently in year 38 of the 5-year plan for my house. And I'm never going to do MVHR. I'm too old. So I use DMEV, decentralized mechanical extract ventilation, which is basically very small, very low energy fans in all the wet rooms, which run permanently. They run permanently at a very low wattage. They've got an override for humidity. So they'll bump up if it gets sweaty. And you have trickle vents, usually in the windows, but they can be elsewhere. And basically, you are using the extract to pull in the supply air. So that can be a much cheaper way. Of course, it's a net loss of heat. It's not heat recovery, but it's a nice manageable system, and they are cheap. So that's pretty good. If you are doing incremental retrofit, get yourself a plan. Gemma was talking about the plans that Future Ready Homes do, and I believe they're free. Hurrah, yes. Obviously, they're not always free if you're not in an area that's doing this sort of scheme. But you know, if you get a plan for the whole, even if you implement in parts. I've got an example I was talking to Gemma about. I've got an example in Sheffield, which is where I'm from, where somebody has had loads and loads of work done, but it's all been done by different contractors. None of it has been stitched together. So we've got sort of insulation under the floor, which doesn't quite connect with the insulation on the walls, which doesn't quite connect with the insulation on the rooms in the roof. Next slide, please. Right, okay. Looking at standards, well, what standard do you want to do your retrofit to? Well, the best I can. Okay, the best I can standard does exist in your mind and my mind, but we don't necessarily mean the same thing. You can just comply with the building regulations. Well, that's fine. The building regulations for refurbishment, yes, there are tight not airtightness, they're tight U value targets, so for the thermal performance, but for air tightness and thermal bridging and so on, it's a lot more loose for refurbishment. There's the passive house standard, so the Retrofit, which is the retrofit version of passive house. Some people have actually done retrofits to the full passive house standard, which is getting down to air tightness of 15 kilo. Sorry, to energy use of 15 kilowatt hours per meter squared per annum and 0.6 air changes per hour. So it's possible. It's jolly challenging, but it is possible. AECB, I can highly recommend the Association for Environment Conscious Building. Been doing green building stuff for many, many years, and it's the sort of the kind of host for the passive house training and so on in the UK. And they also have set their own standards, which are somewhat less rigorous than passive house if you don't feel that you can go that far. There's the carbon light retrofit standard, which is, as you can see, half or twice as much heating requirement, so 50 kilowatt hours per meter squared per annum rather than 25 for Retrofit. Air tightness, again, twice or half as good as the Retrofit standard. Well, we've got different measures as well. Meter cube per meter squared per hour and air changes per hour are different, but sometimes they're the same depending on the shape of your house. It would be lovely if everyone measured it absolutely the same, because we wouldn't all get confused, but hey. And there's also more recently, there's the carbon light step-by-step approach, which assumes incremental, that you're going to do your retrofit incrementally, and it's sort of exactly almost the opposite of what I said just now, that what I always try and do is insulate and airtight the hell out of a building and then worry about how I'm going to put the heating in. And the carbon light step-by-step thing is based on getting a heat pump in as soon as you can, and then doing work afterwards. And I'm not a heat pump specialist, so you know, apart from knowing that some heat pumps modulate better than others, I'm not going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of getting the heat pump in early. If it doesn't modulate very well, it may be a disadvantage, because once you've done all your insulation and your air tightness, you may have a system which is short cycling because it's oversized. But I think there is a heat pump person on here, so they'll probably tell me if I'm wrong. Next slide, please. Yeah. A standard refurbishment, I want my house done up. You know, it's not necessarily going to be with energy as the major consideration. People want a lovely house. You know, I want my house to turn into a country cottage or whatever. What I've always been about is trying to persuade people that when they want things tickled up a bit, they also want us to do the best job that we possibly can in terms of air tightness, in terms of insulation, and not to get distracted. You know, they can always make something prettier, but getting the basic stuff done is going to pay you dividends in terms of reduced heating bills and so on. If you're talking retrofit, you're talking high levels of insulation, probably better than building regs. And while we're talking about building regs, again, I don't know if any of you are, I think maybe you're not general building contractors. I see electrician, I see possibly heat pump. Nod your head, Andrew, if you're a heat pump person. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I saw the name of the company. I assume that was heat pump. But for general builders, there's always the question of, again, this example I was talking about in Sheffield of somebody that's had lots of different work done. As far as I can tell, or I don't actually know that anybody applied for building regs approval for any of those works. And I come across lots of people who have had renovation of thermal elements, adding or replacing a layer on a building, on something that gives to the outside, the floor, the roof, the walls. And there is an obligation to serve a building notice or apply for full plans and get building regs approval. And many householders don't know that. And many contractors don't do that because they assume that's not their problem. It's down to the householder. When I was contracting, I always did the building notice because that ensured that the householder got what they needed. Because what you don't want, I mean, there's lots of good reasons for getting building regulations. It is, you know, it is at least a statement that it does comply with the minimum standards set by the building regulations. It also is sometimes used. Any of you that's had a house purchase or sale recently will know that it's sometimes used as a bit of a weapon in the battle of house buying, in terms of, oh, you haven't got building regulations approval for this bit you did or extension you built. Isn't that dreadful? But we will think it's less dreadful if you knock 10,000 off the price. Well, I think if I've said to people that I've been doing work for over a number of years, every time we do this, that, and the other, we've got to get building regs approval for it, then when they come to sell the house, they've got all their tickets, they've got all their bits of paper, and they don't have to, you know, if somebody wants to drop the price, somebody else can buy the house. That's a little bit cynical, but it is often something that people trip up on when they come to sell, because they've had work done for them. Nobody's told them they need building regs approval. So I think we should all take that on ourselves as contractors. We need a designated air tightness layer. The air tightness layer can be fancy membranes. It can be plastic membranes in certain circumstances. It can be plaster. Hooray! We put on all our houses, unless we're using plasterboard, dot and dab, ugh, terrible thing. We put a layer of wet plaster on, and that is a fantastic air tightness layer. Years ago, when I used to work for a housing association, the very early attempts at internal insulation, we used to use styroliner, which was extruded polystyrene bonded to plasterboard, the first sort of composite board that was around on the market. And everyone was paranoid about losing an inch or two off the size of the room. So they hacked the plaster off to get 3/4 of an inch back. So we'd then taken away a really good air tightness layer, and then to compound it worse, we put the boards on adhesive dabs so that all of the ventilation, which we carefully engineered below our ground floors, could find its way up the gaps between the insulated plasterboards and the wall. Now, your original wall is not very exciting from an insulation point of view, but it's better than it being left outside in the garden, which is effectively what happens when you get thermal bypass. So thermal bridging is also very important. You know, if you are if you're insulating a house internally, for example, where you go from room to room, you've got internal walls meeting the external wall. Well, you draw a very slightly angled line and you can get straight through to outside without being troubled by any of the internal insulation you've just done. So what you want to be looking at is returning some of the internal insulation onto the internal wall so that you mitigate the thermal bridge. Some people say, oh, that's going to look really lumpy. You can be imaginative about it. You can get somebody to make you a set of bespoke bookshelves where you cut out the profile of the insulation on the back of it. So you have the short books at one end, the not very deep books at one end of the bookshelf, and the deep coffee table books at the other end of the bookshelf. We don't have to adhere to a specific target except for the building regulations. But if you can get yourself some more guidance, so like I say, the Association for Environment Conscious Building, AECB, they are very good. Their standards are good. You can fairly easily import elements of retrofit into a revamp. You know, you've got a client that is just really wanting to make their house look more modern and pretty. Well, that's an ideal opportunity. When you're tearing things apart, it's an ideal opportunity to put some insulation or whatever in. And it's really, really important for us all to remember that when we take plaster off an external wall, we are, in the terms of the Building Act, we are renovating a thermal element. We are adding or replacing a layer. And there must be dozens and dozens and dozens of insurance companies in this country that do not know that. Because if you've gone away for a year and while you were away, your gutters leaked catastrophically and all the plaster gets damaged and they replace the plaster, they don't replace it with insulation. they replace it with plaster. Well, actually, you've taken off the plaster to a thermal element. So you are renovating a thermal element. You actually have an obligation to do that, to insulate that. And that generally is not known. And again, that's something which any of us as contractors should be imparting to our clients. I've just pressed the down button, and of course it doesn't work. Gemma, could you press the down button, please, for the next slide? Yeah, I think we all know what sort of drives the demand for retrofit. We realize that it's costing us a fortune to heat our houses. We're concerned about climate change. We want to get away, if we can, from fossil fuels. We might have EPC requirements, certainly for landlords. It may come, and it can't come too soon to some extent for me, for homeowners saying, actually, you've got to make things better. Personally, I would really rather have a full SAP assessment or other assessment than the rather limited assessment done for an EPC, but you know, that's just a matter of taste. We want to make our houses more comfortable, more efficient. We want to do things to heritage buildings, which keep them as heritage buildings, but which also make them not huge fridges in which we live. So you know, that's something that's really important. And there is a clash sometimes between kind of pure heritage builders and people like me who want to do up all sorts of houses, whether they be modern or old. But it is possible to deal with heritage buildings in a sensitive manner and get them uprated. It's also, in any house, it's possible to deal with those buildings in a way that is sympathetic to the way they were built. So if you have a very modern house which has lots of vapor control layers in it and plastic sheets and sheets of foil and all this sort of thing, then it's not doing a very good job of passing water vapor to and fro in the fabric. But older buildings, which were built with clay bricks, with lime plaster, all sorts of things which will allow the beneficial passage of water vapor to and fro. And one of the important things is that we try not to slap on insulants which completely stop that beneficial passage of water vapor. Or if we do use insulants which stop the beneficial passage of water vapor, we need to understand what we're doing and how that changes the dynamics of the house. So it's really important I'm not saying we all need to be building physics experts, although, and I'm not paid by the AECB, if you happen to want a massively deep dive into building physics, the Carbon Light Retrofit course pioneered by the AECB is fantastic. It's a head scramble. I was one of the guinea pigs for it quite a few years ago. I did the course while they were writing it. And I am not a building physicist, I'm a pragmatist. So it was hard going, but it gives you really good understanding of it. Obviously, we're getting interested in heat pumps and in solar as well. You know, solar, for years and years, grants for PV did very little. Income's the feed-in tariff and prices plummeted, which was exactly what the injection of government money was meant to do, and it's been really fantastic. We need to consider, well, we might have a quick talk about this in the at the end, but we need to consider whether we do actually need to make any fabric improvements before we install a heat pump. Like I say, it's slightly counter to my way of thinking, but the AECB step-by-step approach assumes more or less that you fit the heat pump first, but that really does, I think, depend to some extent on quite how energy hungry is your house. If you've got a really big house which needs more than 16 kilowatts and the maximum air source heat pump you can get 16. I think there might be 1 or 2 that are over, but generally it's about 16. Then you've got a bit of a problem. You're going to have to do some insulation first. Personally, I would prefer you do the insulation first in the first place. Gemma, can I have another slide, please? So this is not from me. This is a case study from Future Ready Homes, and this was an offshot bathroom which had 3 external walls, very, very, very cold. The client wanted a heat pump, and she'd had the plan, the retrofit plan, yeah. So was able to sort of pick bits out. Hopefully, in the way it was done, it's ready so that things can be stitched onto it. So, for example, it's the bottom of the internal insulation will be easily accessible so that you can just lift up the floorboards next to it, come up from the room below, and insulate up to it, and always make sure that joints do actually happen tightly. This has used an overlay system on the ground floor. My only concern about overlay systems is just that generally there's not a lot of insulation underneath the pipes, the network of pipes, and obviously, you know, if you're flowing water through at 40 or 50 degrees or whatever, and you've not got much insulation underneath, then the delta T is the temperature difference is pretty high, and it's all wanting to get down into the ground. But again, we might have a brief discussion about this at the end. Yeah, in Sarah's house, they use wood fiber insulation. I love wood fiber insulation. It's in terms of bang for buck efficiency, it's about half as good as PIR, Kingspan Celotex, but it is dense, it's moisture buffering, it is water vapor permeable, it's plastered with lime plaster, so it keeps that push-pull of water vapor. It allows the building to continue breathing as it always has done, and it is my material of choice. So yeah, and of course she got a heat pump, so hurrah. Next slide, please, unless you wanted to say anything about that one, Gemma.
No, only to say that she's been very, very happy. She's gone from having, I mean, it's a lovely home anyway, she loves very much and plans to stay there, but she had a limited budget. She had a few things she wanted to achieve, the air source heat pump being one of them, but she wanted to be more comfortable. And now she's got a far warmer downstairs, yeah, much more comfortable, really, and he's happy that they're running the air source heat pump at low flow temperature, which makes it cheaper to run than it would have done using the radiators. And she's got a bathroom that the kids will now go in. Hurrah. So yeah, she's been really happy with her limited budget, and been able to achieve the goals that she set out to do. So yeah, very happy.
Excellent, thank you. And something that's, again, really important for contractors is making sure that you think through the implications of what you're offering a client. So in that particular case, you're offering the client wood fiber with lime plaster, which will be water vapor permeable. That will keep the building behaving, as I said, as it used to behave when it just had lime plaster straight on the brickwork. If you then decide that you want to tile your bathroom from floor to ceiling with ceramic tiles, you have just rendered your wall completely non-breathable. And in the same way, if you decide that vinyl silk is a really good thing to paint your lime plaster with, you have just rendered it non-breathable as well. Natural finishes, quite right, are very much in demand. they do tend to be scarily expensive. I now close my eyes when I buy a tin of paint because we use quite a lot of clay paint and so on, and it's just staggeringly expensive. If you if you spent so much on your wood fiber and your lime plaster, you want to keep it breathable, but you just cannot afford to buy the fancy stuff, then contract matte emulsion is basically formulated to allow volume house builders to paint their houses before they're fully dried out. And it works on lime plaster as well. By all means, use stuff which is very green and natural. I would say if you ever buy paint which uses orange oil as a solvent, you first start painting with it and you think, oh, lovely, oranges, how nice. We did up a house as an energy centre in Sheffield nearly 20 years ago. And we did all the painting ourselves. And by the time we'd finished the whole house, I never wanted to smell an orange ever again. Anyway, right, next slide, please, Gemma. Right, so how to get into retrofit. I've talked about the AECB. I've talked about local networks. Gemma's talked about local networks. You've got one right on your doorstep. So get busy with future ready homes. Get integrated with them. Have a look at the AECB website, aecb.net. Advertise your interest in retrofit. So, go to the sort of the speed dating type of thing that Gemma was talking about, where you get householders and contractors together. You can always go along and say, well, I'm a general builder. I'm not actually doing retrofit at the moment, but I'm very interested in it. And, I'm interested. You might meet other builders. Offer to work with other people for a day rate. I've had people come and work with me because they want to see what I do and how I do it and so on. And it's just a very useful way of getting into the system, as it were. It'll offer you perhaps the opportunity to work with materials that you wouldn't otherwise work with. You might, through working with somebody that's doing some wood fiber insulation, you might find that they have a lime plasterer that they contract out to. So, there's a lot of plasterers out there, pink plasterers, as I would call them, who've been brought up on gypsum and use nothing but gypsum. And they say, oh, lime plaster, that's a dark art. You can't, you've got to be born to that. Well, yeah. Some lime plaster, if you're using hot lime plaster on old buildings and so on, but you can also get modified lime plasters. Until I got horribly arthritic, I did my own plastering on wood fiber boards. I am most definitely not a plasterer, but it also happens to be very, very forgiving, so that even idiots like me can do a really good job. So if you know any plasterers, do tell them that I won't say the name because I'm not advertising for them, but there's one particular one that I use, which is really easy to use. And I think lime green were mentioned earlier on. They do their own plasters. And, opportunities to sell retrofit to clients when you're doing more general works. You've been brought in to do some joinery work or build some shelves or whatever. And you say, well, this is a really cold room, isn't it? What about, before we box a load of shelves into here, what about I go away again and come back in X months' time when you've done some insulation on this wall? You might do yourself out of job in a short term, but actually you'll probably get the reputation of being somebody that actually knows what they're talking about and has a thought for more than just the job they've been contracted to do. Next slide, please. Do your research. make Part L, the energy bit of the building regs, your Bible. As I say, get to know old buildings or new buildings, how they actually behave, condensation risks, interstitial condensation risks, the risks of condensation occurring on the old wall surface behind the internal insulation that you've put in. It's a very live topic, and particularly if you're using non-breathable materials. Can still happen with breathable materials if you use too much of it, but the warmer you make the room, the colder you make the wall, and any moisture that gets through there just condenses behind it and can cause significant problems. There are some online forums that are really, really useful, with a lot of people who've done retrofit and so on, and it's worth looking out for those. And free training opportunities from Future Ready Homes. Some of the purveyors, for example, of wood fiber insulation, they offer training, whether it be on videos or in person. Next slide, please. Yeah, and as I say, as part of your everyday work, just push the idea of energy upgrades. Remember too that recommendation is the best form of advertising. I never ever advertised. If I'd advertised, I'd have just had a longer list of jobs that I hadn't got time to do. People learned what I did. They asked me to do things, their friends asked me to do things, and that kept me going for 20 odd years. Next slide, please. Yeah, if you are recommending things to clients, do be aware that you might be specifying. And if this is teaching people to suck eggs, I do apologize. But does your insurance cover you to do so? I've got professional indemnity insurance, so I can do a certain level of specification, but I can't do full specs for houses. So you have to be sure that you're equipped with the necessary insurances and so on, as well as the public liability insurance, which you would of course have as a contractor. So do you need to get the householder to engage a designer? Where's your air tightness layer? What are you going to make it with? Is it going to be membranes? Is it going to be plaster? And have you left edges so that when you go from one room to the next, you can pick up that edge? Next slide, please. And talking of edges, so this is a wall prepared for internal insulation. That's what they call a parge coat of lime plaster. So it's an airtight sealing layer of lime plaster, and that's then been painted with a sticky primer around the joist ends, and the joist ends have been taped in to the parge coat with really, really sticky air tightness tape. Anyone that doesn't have any experience of air tightness tape, do get hold of some and stick a bit on your hand and then try and get it off. It's very, very sticky. It's specifically designed to stick building elements onto other building elements and to stick membranes onto building elements. Next slide, please. And this is an example of using what you've already got. This was a Victorian house. The client wanted wood fiber insulation. I was a little bit dismayed when I discovered that the plaster, which looked very neat, was in fact gypsum skim on top of the old Victorian plaster. What often happens, you don't want, in my view, some people have slightly different views about gypsum plaster, but in my view, gypsum tends to sort of suck like a sponge and not really act in the same breathing way that lime does. So I'd rather get rid of the gypsum. Often, if you try and knock a gypsum skim coat off old lime plaster, all of the lime plaster will just drop off the wall. The base coat will drop off as well. This was the hardest base coat that I've ever come across. So I was able to chop away with a bolster and then have my lime plaster there There's no point taking that off and putting some new lime plaster on. That's there already. Thank you very much. But of course, the Victorians didn't waste their money on plastering behind skirting boards. So they fixed the skirting boards onto timber plugs knocked into an open perp joint. And so I've had to put an extra layer. The white layer at the bottom is more lime plaster. And indeed, that goes down behind that layer of 40mm wood fiber there, which is the plinth layer, which the underfloor was actually already insulated with sheep's wool. It's been pulled back. You can just see it poking out there. That was then teased back into place so that ultimately we had a membrane underneath that. We had the insulation on the floor coming up to meet the wood fiber insulation. And again, that went higher up to the next, ready for the insulation to be done in the next room and on the first floor. Next slide, please. So this is just the wood fiber insulation going on. So you butter the back of the boards with a tooth trowel and slap it on. Next slide, please. Then you put a tooth trowel coat on top of that. And next slide, please. Then you put reinforcing mesh in there. And next slide, please. Then you, if you've butchered the lovely Victorian covings, you get them remade by your local fibrous plasterer. So you would walk into that room and you'd never know that anything had happened to it, but it's a hell of a lot warmer than it ever was before. I can't remember what the next slide is, Gemma. So there you go. In summary, it's a summary. So yeah, the demand for retrofit is here. People like me, a lot of people not like me, can spend their whole working life doing this stuff without ever having to advertise, because once people know about you, they won't leave you alone. And that's really good for your business, particularly if you're unlike me and actually want to grow your business. As far as I was concerned, one of me was enough. But you know, if you want to grow your business, it's a great opportunity. And if you know, I think none of you are general builders, but if you were general builders, it would be something that you could add in to what you offer at the moment. Build tight, insulate right. So do a nice airtight substrate, insulate well, and if you possibly can insulate externally, we haven't talked about much about external insulation. If you can externally insulate, then you can put much more insulation on in certain circumstances, because you're wrapping up the masonry in a nice warm blanket. Whereas if you put it internally, you're making all the joist ends and the walls themselves colder. So you've got this possible interstitial condensation risk. Right. I think I'm going to shut up. Thank you for listening, and I hope I haven't bored you.
Thank you very much, Nick. That was really, really, yeah, interesting. Sorry, I'm just going to shove a reminder up there of the things that we've got going on. Based on the people that are in the room today, I think what's quite interesting is, well, a couple of the points you made about there is an opportunity there as well. Anytime you enter someone's home and you're doing any sort of work, there is an opportunity to kind of point out, oh, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? I am thinking kind of specifically with heat pumps in mind, because yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of comments that can be made around heat pumps, but a concern is that they can't heat a house appropriately, and as you said, there's issues around capacity and ability to actually deliver the heat, but there's also this point of, well, actually, if the house is cold now, if you've got uncomfortable rooms, if you've got air tightness issues, if you've got damp, if you've got mold, if you've got any of those things, a heat pump isn't going to fix that. It's not going to get any better than it was. So there is an opportunity there to kind of say, you know what, you might take this time to think about doing other things, and if you've got other issues going on. And yeah, I mean, I wonder, I don't know, how is it going to go? Maybe some of you people who are offering other services would start taking some building work into your own business. If you can't, or hopefully you could find others to partner with that would do a good job, but maybe there isn't an opportunity there actually to bring some of those things in-house so that you're delivering a more full service. I don't know. Just
I mean, you do tend to find that you do end up with most builders end up with a network which includes an electrician, a plumber, you know, and nowadays it's probably going to be somebody that concentrates more on insulation, somebody that does heat pumps or solar. So I think those sort of informal networks are beginning to exist, but the more we can foster them and formalize them, the better.